Okay. Hey there, everyone. I can see the attendees count climbing by the second. Very excited to get started today and really just give you everything you need to know about the upcoming investment opportunity for Phyco Life. So I guess I will crack on and get started. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for the Phyco Life Investor webinar. I'm Robin Holt from Agency. I have the pleasure of being joined by Pia Winberg here today and would like to just start by doing a quick acknowledgement to country, acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. I come to you from the land of the Wurundjeri people and would like to acknowledge their elders past and present. Now, I'll hand over to Pia really quickly to do a quick introduction, and then we will go into the schedule for today and what we can expect to get out of today's webinar session. So over to you, Pia.
Thanks, Robin, and hi everyone. Welcome to the webinar session. And yeah, we've been overwhelmed with interest and questions offline and on the side. So it's great that we've got a good turnout today, and we can probably answer many of the questions that so many of you have. I'll run through a few slides that outline the company today and the background from my point of view at this end, and what this offer is about. But you may have questions that I don't cover because it's quite a complex platform of technology that we're sitting on. And there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers, and nothing's off the table. Just go for it, whether it's on skincare or planet Earth. Yeah, just let me know. But I'll get started with a few slides. Do you want me to jump into those, Robin?
Yeah, please do. And just as Pia's already mentioned, she'll go through these slides. And for everybody else who has any questions, please use the Q&A feature to ask those questions. In there, we will acknowledge the questions. We'll try our very best to get through as many of those as possible. There's a lot of you here today, so we'll really just try and make it as relevant as possible and do everything we can to get through the questions. So please use that Q&A feature as much as possible. So over to you, Pia, and once we're done here, we'll hand over to everybody else to answer all of your questions.
So here we go, and I'm speaking to you from the beautiful but a bit cool this morning Jervis Bay area, which is in the Yuin Nation and locally home of the Wodi Wodi people and the Jerinja mob around Jervis Bay, Nowra area. And I've had a long standing relationship with this area, although my heritage and roots are in Sweden in the Northern Hemisphere. I have, as a child coming to Australia, been camping out at Green Patch, if people know about that, in Jervis Bay. I actually did my PhD in Jervis Bay after doing my master's at Stockholm, and I've had a strong connection to the local mobs here, even having started one of the technologies in the early days on land and in partnership with them, and maintain a strong connection to the treasures of the sea from this region. And the saltwater people here have a very strong connection to the beautiful waters of Jervis Bay. And if no one's ever been here, I always recommend a visit. But I've been living in this region for about 25 years now, and being here in the early days as an academic, looking at marine conservation as well, but then realizing that we need to start creating sustainable industries that are transitional and new industries for regional areas that offer opportunities that are renewable, and also seek to maintain the integrity of the amazing resources that we have around us on the South Coast. So that's sort of the background of where I've started Venus Shell Systems from, which is the head company of Phyco Life and Phyco Health. We started with Venus Shell Systems as the beginning, and then when we started to make ingredients and products and present ourselves as a brand in the market space, we evolved to develop Phyco Life as an ingredients and innovation entity, and Phyco Health as our trading brand at the front end. And some of you here today may be our customers or shareholders from previous raises, and you're well aware of that, but there may be questions at the end to how all of these entities work. But we're presenting as Phyco Life today because that's really the innovation wheel spoke in the wheelhouse, I guess. But we're talking about investment in the whole platform. So let me press on with what the platform is. Today, I'll talk about our origin and the mission. I'll talk about the operations that we're running here today, about what we did since our last crowd equity raise, which was just over a year ago now. We raised 1.23 million, and we've done a lot in this last year. And then what this raise is about today. And then we'll open up for Q&A on any topics that you like. So just to go back to our origins, as I mentioned, I have a history from both Australia and Sweden. And I was at Stockholm University doing my master's in 1998, looking at how to remediate the nutrients along the coastlines of the world that come from the food manufacturing industry. And nutrient loads in the coastline are being felt today very seriously in many nations like the Netherlands, the Gulf of Mexico, but even here in Australia, and you may be aware of the issues that happened in South Australia last week with offshore algal blooms, and Queensland as well, and the barrier reef suffering. It's in part warm temperatures and climate change, but it's in bigger part nutrient delivery from land-based systems. And so that was where the technology started, looking at how to, one, remediate that, but not only that, see it as a resource. We paid a lot of money for these nutrients to be put into agriculture, and then we throw them out to sea. So we're about catching those nutrients as a renewable resource and putting them back into the food chain, but also medical biotechnology opportunities, as you'll see. When I then brought that thinking to Australia here, I had to look first at what seaweeds do we have, because like gum trees and koalas and kangaroos, we have very unique seaweeds in our ocean. And we're really not going to compete with the nori of Japan or the kombu of China, and in that space emerging as a new industry. We should come with something new and innovative. So we've focused on green seaweeds rather than the brown and red types that I just mentioned. And these are interesting because they capture nutrients very well. And they're also full of protein, which is exciting for nutrition, but not only protein, so many other trace elements and gut healthy fibers that we'll talk about later today. So we found some unique Australian species. Scale looked at how to reproduce them, how to scale them up from a test tube, and we've been doing that from a test tube since 2015. We then integrated to a large-scale wheat processing plant that's here on the south coast of New South Wales called the Manildra Group. And we showed that not only can we remediate nutrients from aquaculture, but even food processing plants. So we catch nitrogen and carbon dioxide from the gin fermentation at the Manildra Group. And we showed that we could grow seaweed very rapidly at 50 times the rate of land crops in land-based systems. And this reoxygenates the water, buffers the water, reducing acidity, catches the nutrients that would other overload the coastline, and creates a new crop. Then I had to work out, well, people don't know what to do with this crop. Food companies weren't looking to buy it. So we actually then had to go, well, we'll make something with it. So we then developed a range of products, put them into palatability trials, but even human clinical studies. And we developed a range of products that were more off the shelf, ready to eat and put on your skin, because that was easier for people to do than taking a bunch of green seaweed powder and working out what to do with it themselves. It's also about nutrition and the formulations in food and health and skincare ingredients, and that knowledge around different seaweeds and how to use them safely in foods in different ways, because all seaweeds are different, is something that we also do by formulating the food, supplements and skincare ranges. And these products started to go so well. So just over a year ago, in the financial year of 24, we actually did a crowd equity raise twice and raised 1.8 million in total. And that really helped us to accelerate the marketing and the storytelling and the delivery of packaging, to invest in what we needed to do to start scaling that market. And we were able to achieve some great growth in the last 12 months because of that. So we actually have now increased the revenue by 170% to $1.2 million is where we're currently at for this financial year. And last financial year was about 800. And so now that we've done that with a focus on the skincare products and the launch of our ingredient Hyaluronic last year, which is a plant-based replacement for the very famous hyaluronic acid in skincare, we recognize that if we're going to scale our supplements, we need to put in a similar gear and start ramping that up. And so I'll tell you about the crowd opportunity that we're here today to talk about. Our current operations, though, if you, as I mentioned, are in the sort of Jervis Bay, Shoalhaven and area and in New South Wales. But you'll learn here that we're also seeking to expand a bit further in New South Wales. But currently, our technology has developed to a fully integrated technology platform across 6 operational units. We had to do the whole chain to demonstrate and get it to market because there were no buyers or manufacturers in the pipeline that knew what to do with the product. So we now have a full seaweed cultivation and nutrient remediation technology. As you saw, these are land-based systems. They're on the coastal zone, and you can see in the image just down here where our pilot farm was placed next to the Manildra Group wheat refinery, and we pumped in the salt water from the coastline there. We caught carbon dioxide from the wheat refinery and nutrient streams, and we could grow seaweed faster than any land crop, 50 times if you recall. And we demonstrated that the water that came out of that seaweed system was super oxygenated and very buffered, so we could raise the pH. And it's important in zones like this on floodplains where there's often acid sulfate soils and things like that. We then had to work out how to dry it. You may not, and process it. You know, when it's in a test tube, you think, oh, then we just dry it. That'll be easy. But the whole learning curves of drying lots of seaweed and keeping it in food grade standards and knowing how the cultivated to dried product was consistent all the way through. And food quality was guaranteed, and took a while. As you scale each step, you often hear about scaling challenges in industries. Each time you take a bigger step up, it's like, whoa, how do we deal with this now that it's this big? And so we've taken those steps over the last years, and we now have an amazing drying technology. And we've also built a biorefinery here that I'm standing in today in Huskisson, Jervis Bay, where we can process seaweed. We can do extracts from them. And these extracts we formulate into products that are in food, supplements, skincare. We now manufacture and educate the market about these products, and we sell them mostly directly to consumers. And that's been amazing because we've had the direct feedback and response from customers as we grow, some of whom are shareholders as well. And it means it's been a very direct and immediate test and response system that we've been able to run and improve our products with over the years now, and we continue to do that. We're happy with what we've achieved, but we're never happy with the products as they stand, and we're always excited to be improving on the packaging, sustainability of the packaging, the taste, the diversity of the products, and getting feedback from our customers is something we do every day. Here's just a few images. On the top left, this is the factory that I'm in the office of today, and some of the processing plants. Also with the crowd funds last year, we looked at taking the technology into indoor vertical systems. This is what the dried green seaweed looks like, and some of the ingredients that we extract from the seaweed are there. So as I mentioned, since the last raise, we said that we would start scaling the processing capacity to make the hyaluronic that goes into our skincare products. We wanted to boost the e-commerce and the marketing. We demonstrated that we could do this cultivation indoors in vertical infrastructure as well. And what was exciting is that after a few years now, that the New South Wales government is taking the industry opportunity very seriously and commissioned Deloitte to do a report that was the New South Wales Seaweed Prospectus. And I'll talk about that a little bit in this session as well. And they released that report here in our factory in December last year. Yeah, as of April and now May and halfway through June, yeah, we've tripled the monthly revenue that we had back in October. So in a 6-month period with the right marketing, we've been able to do that. And we've now surpassed the $1 million in revenue mark for our range, and we continue to scale sales this month as well. And we're just about to launch our final biome balance range. We had a soft launch with some research focused partnerships just in April, and that's been really successful, and the feedback on the new formulations is amazing. Yeah, that final packaging and product will be released in just a couple of weeks, probably during this crowd equity raise. And some of the rewards are those products as well. So just to take a step back to what we did in the last crowd raise and what we focused on to make these steps of growth happen. And that was that we identified that the complex molecule that we have in our seaweed, that if you want to know the full molecular technical name is sulfated xyloramnoglucuronic acid, nobody really knew what I was talking about. And then I realized that, hey, this molecule actually in our skincare work and research and recreating full thickness skin tissue, and actually the molecular code and design is just like the molecular codes in human tissue, including hyaluronic acid. And the function is therefore like hyaluronic acid. It holds 2,000 times its water. Hyaluronic acid traditionally from animals, but also now bacterial fermentation. But this is the world's first plant-based alternative to hyaluronic acid. And as you saw, we don't have any waste products from our production, very clean, and also has benefits of blocking certain enzymes that would degrade hyaluronic acid. So it's more stable. So we came out with this story in skincare formulations, and that's been a really big success story in how we can scale what we're doing and explain it to the market more clearly. And that's what this raise is about. Not only do we have molecules that mimic hyaluronic acid and work like that, we happen to have a seaweed, different to other seaweeds, that has molecules that mimic chondroitin sulfate. And for those of you that don't know, chondroitin sulfate is a $7.5 billion supplements industry, commonly linked to joint health. There's other molecules that are derivatives of that, like glucosamine. Some people know it as shark cartilage because some of it is. And even the bone broth industry is in the chondroitin sulfate space. And this molecule is typically just in animal tissues. And as I mentioned, a lot of it's coming from sharks. It's people are taking it for reducing inflammation and gut and joint health. And it's a large and growing market. It's actually why the Asians even like to eat shark fin soup. And that's a little bit what we saw the opportunity was here, is that here's a big industry relying actually on quite substantial fisheries, some of them legal, but some of them even illegal. So traditionally, we know that about 20 to 30% of the market in chondroitin sulfate is from sharks and wild fisheries. But even in the bovine non-shark sources of these supplements, there's 30% of them have shark DNA in them through scientific publications that have come out about the illegal fisheries around this. And ironically, even 20% of the non-animal sourced chondroitin sulfate, the synthetic chondroitin sulfate molecules, have shark cartilage, shark DNA in them. And so we're about looking at the opportunity to replace this supplements market with much more productive, much more sustainable, and much more marine friendly ingredient from our seaweed. What's nice is that we've already not just done the sustainability story, but we've done human clinical studies. And even though people take a lot of supplements like chondroitin sulfate and turmeric and things like that and other seaweeds, it's actually very rare that people have done human clinical studies. They may be rat studies or mice studies or benchtop studies, but we've done 2 human clinical studies here with my connections through the University of Wollongong. And we showed that we could shift gut flora, we could shift 5 inflammation markers, 5 cytokine markers, and these cytokine markers were linked to skin health, specifically psoriasis. and we could improve the health of people in these studies within a 4-week period significantly. But more importantly, we now have customers that buy these products, and many of them came to us because we were featured in Dr. Michael Mosley's book, The Clever Guts Diet, and unfortunately we lost Dr. Mosley last year. But the discussions I'd had with him and his writing about our research in 5 pages of that book triggered a sudden interest in our research and what we do. And so our supplements have been on the market with the name Sea Fiber. And here we're going to be transitioning to the ingredient being called Phycondrin, because that is more easy for people to understand the context of what this supplement is. So this raise is about bringing in our existing, and for those that are here, welcome back, existing shareholders and new. So many people reached out and said they missed out and wanted to be a part of it. Crowd equity raise. So for this raise, we aim to scale and secure more seaweed supply, and that is by expanding existing and some new footprints in seaweed production. It's also about scaling up yet again the processing plant capacity, because the sea fiber requires a lot more seaweed and processing to deliver and scale to the market than the skincare does. We also want to be able to up the grade of the extracts that we make and all of the analytical specifications that we can measure, because as I will show you in some of the R&D projects we've got, there's an exciting future of biotechnology opportunities that keep ticking along in the background. And we want to just keep on this trajectory of growing the pipeline of sales through our e-commerce, which is really strong now, but emerging into some B2B, and also we're touching on some ingredient sales into the market, so we can be the intel inside some of the other food, skincare and supplement products in the market. So that's the current focus of what we're going to do in the next year. And it aligns with, as I mentioned, what the New South Wales government has now just released as the New South Wales Seaweed Prospectus. And you can find this online, but they did recruit Deloitte to look at what seaweeds are in Australia. Why has Australia missed out on what is the biggest marine crop from the oceans, bigger than fish and mussels and prawns collective? But it's all in Asian countries for the most part. And how can Australia, that's girt by sea, take part in this, and New South Wales specifically, with our amazing coastline and estuaries, and also food processing nutrients that we can regenerate and have a circular food system in the state, not just at just a farm level. So take a look at that if you look online. And I don't want to be small in my thinking about what could be achieved with our company, but also as an industry in the future. So our vision now, after we've achieved what we've done by setting up our processing systems in Huskisson and working on all the research, it's now to target 2 more sites in New South Wales. We then see by 2030 we'd be looking at putting the farming systems and products to other sites in the country and even abroad. There are many countries that could use this type of nutrient capture and new product generation, and we have collaborators overseas that we maintain loose discussions with for that space. But there's many other companies that will be able to join the supply chain, from production to processing to manufacturing new products, and globally as well, because the nutrient remediation issue exists on any coastline of the world. And if anyone wants to ask me about details of that, I'm happy to follow up that later. And just as a quick note, I mentioned before, the future opportunities in the biotech space are actually geekily exciting for me. It's not where I started, but when we found this molecule and how similar it is to human tissue, we've now got on the cover of one of the biomaterial science journals by printing 3D skin with seaweed gels and human cells. And we could recreate full thickness skin tissue because we mimic some of those human gels. And so now we have connections in the research world that are linked to technologies in stem cell cultures, vaccines for slow release molecules, mucosal health, so dry eyes, The gut, of course, we've already done. Oral health. Mucosal health is a really emerging and important area, especially for people who have gone through some skin damage, radiation treatment. We even work with burns research. There's colleagues who do look at injections to replace hyaluronic acid in joint health by injecting it there. Even some biobatteries and our molecule working as the electrolyte. Some early discussions of where things could go from this ingredient. But right now, we're about investing in what we do today. I just thought I'd throw up the company structure that I mentioned in the beginning, just to illustrate that I'm speaking here as Phyco Life, the innovation part of the Venus Shelf Systems of a group of companies, but they are all one, currently taxed as one entity, but we operate in different ways depending on what we're doing. And Phyco Health, of course, is the consumer-facing brand on products that we sell in that space, but there'll be products that extend to other partners and companies and or ingredients that go into other companies' products in the future. And so that's where Phyco Life comes in, and that's what this investment is all about, the innovation and scaling of this seaweed platform. I'll just wrap up quickly before we get to Q&A by introducing our board. And I'm very excited since this last year to have Anthony Hargreaves as a non-executive director in the company. Anthony's been a bit of, I guess, a mentor and someone local to where we are in Kangaroo Valley, if anyone knows where that is, touching base with me now and then over the last 7 or so years. And Anthony joined us on the board this year. And Sandrina was a wonderful crowd equity investor from our last raise, and has also got a strong background in marine conservation support, having been involved with Pacific Islands Conservation, Great Barrier Reef, previously on Take 3 for the Sea board, and really excited to recently welcome John Kelly, strategically, because John has got a background in scaling as his own startup in medical technology to an IPO and commercialize something that has very high regulations around it in his company, Atomo Diagnostics. And John also has links down here to Jervis Bay, and that's how we came in contact, but realized as well that his background and skill sets and interest for John, I hope, in this world of scaling seaweed into potential medical areas is pretty exciting. And so John offers a perspective of the scaling journey, how investment and IPO strategies may work and when it might be good to make them work. And so I welcome and really enjoy the company of our 3 directors on the board at the moment. So I think that gives me a little bit, a bit over 20 minutes. That's normal, hey. And I'll open the floor for some Q&A, and let me know what's in your mind. Just if you want to read the actual techie research, if you're one of those people who are an academic, because we do have academic shareholders, customer shareholders, plumber shareholders, government shareholders, all sorts. But that QR code will take you to a page that links to more information, including scientific publications, if you're so inclined to read those. Thanks,
I
Rob.
think that's already going to answer one of the first questions that's come through. So that's great. And that's fantastic. And thanks so much, Pia. It's a beautiful summary of the business that you've built to date. I think I've said this as we've worked together on this crowd equity raise. The more we speak, the more I really fully understand that there's so much opportunity within the space that you're in. And actually, the more you look into each aspect of the business, you really have to think about, okay, in what order do I focus as a business? How do I strategically make sure that I take advantage of the right opportunities, because you've invested so heavily into the research so far to date, and now the market demand is really, really strong out there. So there's so much more to unpack, and I feel like I'm hoping we scratch as much of the surface as we can in this session and get through as much of that as we possibly can. So the first question, which I'll just start out with, is from Jared. Thank you very much for your question. How does this impact current investors? Obviously, you've done two equity crowdfunding raises. Going to do another crowd equity raise means that everybody gets equally diluted as part of the proportion of shares that they own. Maybe you just want to talk a little bit about what this means for current investors who have come in either in the first or second round when you do this third equity crowdfunding raise.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And so many of our existing shareholders who came in last time are excited about these developments and in this audience with expressions of interest for this second round. But our original shareholders will always get and will have a preemptive right to invest in proportion to their existing shareholdings if they would like to do so. And maintain that level of investment that they have. We've already had existing shareholders increase their shareholdings during the last year a little bit with some of the internal secondary share trading. So yes, those who don't invest though will end up having some dilution, but the dilution will be of what we can see here is a much bigger pie.
Mm.
And so it's part of the journey of scaling a company. Is that existing shareholders will be on a ride of growth that they've already invested in.
Yeah.
They can continue that ride in the position that they're in by investing again in this crowd equity raise, or there will be some dilution, but a narrower slice of a bigger pie might be a bigger slice in the end anyway. So I
Most
hope
definitely.
that summarizes it.
Yeah, most definitely. And also, I've just seen a couple of questions in there around how they can access the recording, or if we are recording. I just wanted to clarify, we are recording today's session. So if you do have to run, or if you want to send this around to any other potential interested parties, you can do so. So we are recording. Don't worry about it. If you do have to run, we will send the recording around to everybody, so you get a chance to watch everything. And as well as that, please do use the Q&A feature if you do have a question, and you can go in there, and if your question has already been asked, you can upvote it, so then we can see that there's a number of you that would like to have that specific question answered. Another question which we've had from Josephine: why are you crowdfunding as opposed to other ways and other methods of funding? Of course, it's always a question that comes up when it comes to an equity crowdfunding round. We've spoken about this at quite a lot of length, so maybe you can crack on through and really just really dive into why your equity crowdfunding for the business.
Yeah. So in the beginning, the ideas were small, and I could do what I did on a lab bench. I could make pasta with my daughters at home and innovate in that way, and that was something we could cover.
Mm.
Then we got to a point of, well, we need to establish farms, and we need to get pumps and systems that I can't afford. And so in the early days, we had private. A handful of about 10 private investors who were interested in the space. And that was a time prior to crowd equity funding, which only is it 5 years now, Robin? I think crowd equity.
2018 at the
7
beginning
years
was when
now.
the legislation started, and then it
Yeah.
was at the end
So
of the year when it was open to PTY Ltd.
yeah, so had that been well, I actually lie. I did a little bit of crowdfunding because when Michael Mosley wrote about us in his book, The Clever Guts Diet, I went then people went, we want this, and so we didn't
Yeah.
have it, and so we had to make it. And I did a little tiny, not crowd equity, but a pre-order crowd raise for for some supplements on the Indiegogo website, and we
Yeah.
raised back then 60,000, and we made the first batch of products and delivered to customers within 6 months. And some of those 300 first customers are still customers today. But then as we scale, we have some early investors, but this is quite, as you've seen, a broad pipeline of technology that requires capital infrastructure, research and development costs. And so you can keep going back to private investment markets, but you actually then had to stick to 20 investors. And what crowd equity does is it allows us now legally as a private company to have many more. And now we boast 880 plus shareholders. And it's also, for me personally, super motivating because it's a way for people who aren't normally in the investor space to be a part of making innovation happen. Many people are actually touched by some of the gut health issues or other things that we're working with, or skin conditions. And it's really meaningful and motivational for us to have people that are affected by the solutions we're providing, to have them on the journey as well. So I feel that it's just it was something I thought about very much the first time I did it. Is it the right thing to do, or is it not the right thing to do? But after I did it, I've never been as motivated. It's never been as fun. Um, and um, and uh, and there's both high net worth and local teachers and who have invested. And there's
Mm.
so much talent in the pool. Like, we have professors of various sciences in our cohort as well. So one day I'd love to map the team, the shareholder capacity and skills base that we have. I think it's outstanding. And I guess it's more than just a financial strategy as to why we're doing crowd equity funding, but it's really about growing a company that has both purpose and profitability packaged together. And crowdfunding is really suitable for that, especially as we go all the way to consumer products where our customers can become shareholders, even our staff are shareholders. I
Yeah.
hope that sums it up.
That sums it up really well because you're ultimately saying it's the only way to include everybody. And you've had high net worths join you on the journey. And if those high net worths come in and invest into the business separately, then that's very possible. But actually, when they join alongside the crowd, that's much more powerful because it's often perceived that equity crowdfunding investors are just your sort of small parcel size retail investors. And that's certainly not the case when you work in the space and you do see so many businesses who attract some really sophisticated investment as part of the process. So that's great. Is there a minimum contribution? Of course, the offer is opening next week. We are now in the final week of the expression of interest campaign, and we're just finalizing some details of the offer document. So, certain details we won't be able to discuss today, but as far as a minimum parcel size is concerned, is that something which you can talk about? And of course, we might slightly change this a little bit next week when we open.
Hmm. Yeah, so we're keen to. It's always a balance, and the idea being is, like, if you have very low investment amounts, and there's so many people at small investment about what's a meaningful, but there's so many people that want to come in and join and be part of it too, but don't
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of opportunity. And it's also about
Yeah,
spreading the risk is what you can do with crowd equity. So you can raise quite a lot from many people with small amounts. So we're thinking that the ballpark of $500 would be a minimum, and that so many people can participate at that scale. And
mm,
as I said, many of these people are customers as well, and so it's a bit about being a part of the journey as a customer and a shareholder, and being involved as the company grows. That's the sort of minimum that we're thinking, but there's people that are talking to us with much larger parcels than that,
yeah, great.
as retail, both retail and wholesale investors involved.
Of course. Fantastic. And Jennifer's asked, what is the relationship between your raw product and the imported green our nori that I sprinkle on my Japanese okonomiyaki, uh, nomayaki, the savory pancake. So basically, what's the difference between those two products? I knew I'd mess that up.
Oh, I'd love to talk for an hour on this. And it's very exciting because that's actually not a green seaweed, it's red. And we'll actually be a refresh of the conversation, ABC Conversations with Richard Feidler, which we were on a few years ago, where I talk about the different seaweeds and the sex life of seaweeds, because red seaweeds, and that's what nori is, even though it may look greenish, if you get the fresh seaweed and hold it up to the light, it's got purplish tinges to it. And some of the nori packages, you'll see purplish tinges. It's a red seaweed, and it's very different from an evolutionary point of view to greens and to kelps. So seaweeds are many, many types. And that's part of what we do, is that we know you can't use, say, if you're a farmer, you don't make mashed potatoes with blueberries. It wouldn't work. And so the same thing happens with seaweeds. And so you need to know your seaweeds and how they work in nutritional ways, in culinary ways, in health ways. And the red seaweeds, nori, we have very nice red nori species here in Australia that I've been looking at, and one day we may take on some of the other species as well. But we focus on the greens today because I touched on it before. They are really good at catching the nitrogen and nutrients along the coastal zone. It loads them with protein, and we can come to the market with true innovation. So some of the things we're doing, we're world first in. Whereas
Mhm.
if I was trying to just replicate the nori wheel, I'd be competing on a commodities from straight up from a small scale, and that doesn't work so well. So I'm happy to give yeah, some links as well on our website. Some like BBC talks a little bit, did a story on us and talks a bit about the different categories of seaweeds. But that is the difference, and all of those seaweeds are currently imported to Australia. Yeah, so a different flavor, a different application.
Yeah, yeah, great. And I'll just answer this question here quickly because we've had a lot of upvotes on it. How is the company being valued for this round? How was it valued in the last round? Um, I'll just highlight that the valuation in this round is going to be displayed in the offer document when we do go live. For most of you who have expressed interest to invest on this webinar, we will send around a link if you haven't expressed interest to invest so you can gain access to the offer and the offer document on Thursday next week when we do open. But effectively, the valuation for this round will be displayed in that document. Here, I know you can talk to the value of the company in the last round and maybe to what revenue you were doing in the business when you last raised as well.
Yeah, so last time we did raise at $6 a share, and the investors came in the last crowd are about 10% of the company now. And since then, we've grown quite a lot, as I hope you saw in the presentation. So we've gone from an $800,000 revenue to a now 1.3. We're approaching a million revenue this financial year, and accelerating as we speak. So the valuation will be slightly more, is what I can say.
Yeah, great. And just in sort of this theme of questions, you've got a question here about are there plans to list? Of course, we're going to cover off exit opportunities. I think it's always important to say that any investors who are coming into this round should really just acknowledge that they are still investing in an illiquid investment. They won't be able to sort of easily sell their shares and move on from their shares because you are using this funding round to grow the business because there is a lot of opportunity. You're raising capital that you need to be able to deploy in the business to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So it is always important to just acknowledge that because these are liquid shares, you really should always consider that it's not money that you would need to access in the next few years. You're going along the journey, like you said earlier. It's really about trying to buy into a pie that's growing, and you own a small part of that. And really seeing the company go from strength to strength, I think there's an awful lot of opportunity here. But yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about your future plans and what the potential exit looks like, and if you would consider a listing in the future.
Yes, and that's and that's always something that we consider and discuss. And as I mentioned, one of our board members actually came in part because of his skill sets in the medical space, but also he took his own startup through to an IPO. And it is one way for people to be able to exit the company and realize profits on their investments potentially in the future. But there are other ways in which profits or exits can be realized. And so, although an IPO is potentially on the cards and something we do discuss, because there's a lot of overheads linked to an IPO, and we want to put the overheads into growth right now, not administration of a company. So that's sort of the discussions that we're having for the future. And that said, there could be scenarios where dividends work. There could be scenarios where there's buyers that want to come in and offer to buy chunks of the company. Or as you see, it's a horizontal pipeline of different operations. and how we commercialize and partner and scale all of those entities is something that the board is working on all the time. And so we currently trade shares for all the existing shareholders inside the company at the moment. I actively do some secondary market share trading, but it just can't be as broadly advertised, say, like the ASX. And that's why it's illiquid. It's not illiquid because it's illiquid because I can't go out and market the shares like an ASX can.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
one day maybe we do an IPO, and that could be one of the exit strategies. But exit strategies are always in our mind as directors on the board for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. And just a quick question, which we already answered earlier, but we'll definitely cover off here. For Verendra, just asked if you can please send through the research papers that you did with the University of Wollongong and regarding the sea fiber. Please send them through. More than happy to do this. As far as an expression of interest is concerned, we'll be more than happy to just add these to the emails that we've been sending out to everybody, so everybody can take a look at those and read through them. Great question here from Sam. Hi, Pierre. Do you have these two further sites for seaweed production locked in? How far down the road with these further sites are you?
Yeah, so I've been at both of them a lot in the last few months, and I'll be heading up there again next week. So it's actually, I guess it's a shame for the New South Wales prawn farming industry, but it's serendipitous for us in that a whole lot of saltwater farming landscape has become available, or
Mm,
it's not farming prawns anymore because the
yeah.
prawn farming industry had some hiccups earlier in the year, if people might be aware of that. But it means that there's actually hundreds of hectares of vacated prawn farming landscapes and infrastructure. We need saltwater, coastal flatland systems, and also close to nutrient sources. And one is up in the Yamba area. And there's a lot of agriculture and nutrients in those coastlines as well, a lot from sugarcane and macadamia industries. So that's one of the sites, and the other is with partners who I've been collaborating with for a while now, CO2, and we continue to partner on both processing technologies in similar but different algae seaweed worlds. So one company who are also some shareholders with us is CO2, and they do microalgae. So I've worked with microalgae as well. Seaweed is algae, it's just bigger than microalgae and different. And the microalgae are grown for high lipid and omega-3, and we grow our seaweeds for different nutrition and the gut health and the polymers in wound and gut healing. So they're different in that way, but we can actually align cultivation and processing systems very well and share resources. So imagine that you've got two algal species that can start to contribute to the omega-3 and the protein and the polysaccharide gel, chondroitin and hyaluronic markets, all from algae. And so we're looking at marrying these worlds of aquaculture
Mm,
across many species. And you may have picked up when I spoke about it that the technology behind knowing how to grow seaweeds, the reproductive cycles and everything is quite complex. So for one person, and I've run farms with like 4 species on them, but each species has its own, that's the trickiest part of a system. And so managing these components and co-sharing land resources and seawater pumping resources is this amazing opportunity just further north. So we're actually planning to establish production on one of the sites within about 6 weeks. And we may even have the second site footprint established because the pipes and flows and everything are there before the end of the year. I've got some of these schedules and plans in the offer document, but we're ready to go, and we would like to get a 10-ton seaweed addition to our current
mm.
capacities, before the end of the year. So yeah,
Fantastic.
ready to go.
Fantastic. I just wanted to say there's a whole heap of really, really good questions. Um, as we come up to 10 to 1, we're going to do our very best to get through as many of these as possible. We might spill over slightly, so if you need to go, don't worry at all. We'll obviously send you a recording. I'm going to be answering the questions in order of what's upvoted the most times. So if there is a question in there that really touches on the point that you want to make, please do upvote it. So great question from Sharon here. Have you considered the animal supplements market? It's a huge market as well, with little research supporting these supplement products in the market. I mean, I think as far as opportunity is concerned, you're not short of any of it.
No, I just I need to just push ideas away and
Yeah.
opportunity. But the animal space is absolutely there,
Yeah.
and we've even done some of our research on different types of animals. So we work with
Mm,
everything from abalone. So say the abalone industry in the southern states has evolved since the wild fisheries went into decline. And they're feeding pellets to abalone that often come from land-based crops,
mm,
from everything from soy to fish oils and um, wheat products, but abalone don't normally eat that. And so when I had a PhD student put seaweed into the diet of abalone in cultivation, and we could change the abalone profile from omega-3 poor seafood to omega-3 rich seafood with the seaweed that we grow,
mm,
in a short space of time, because the old saying is true: you are what you eat, and what an abalone eats, it becomes. And so we showed improvements to abalone quality, nutrition profile, and omega-3
mm,
specifically. But chondroitin sulfate is well known for its use in dogs, for example, and hyaluronic as well, even in the racehorse industry,
yeah.
osteoarthritis injections as well. So yes, there's lots of opportunity in the animal space, and even some of our shareholders come from animal health, and looking at ways that we can collaborate with them, because touching so many market channels is also something that you have to focus on the channels that you're working with, because
Mm,
I can't sell skincare to a human at the same time tell the same story to a horse. And
yeah.
so it's about getting partners that can work with us in that way. But yes, it's a huge market.
Yeah, 100%. And Helen here is just wondering about your choice of packaging for the face creams, etc.
Uh-huh.
Plastic and metal. It's difficult to get all the serum out. I
Mm.
think that's probably a personal experience, but
Yes.
definitely, one from a customer, as far as things are concerned, no doubt, like you said, you've got a lot of different products. Even when you enter potential different markets, maybe you don't enter that same, different market with the same brand.
Mm.
But maybe talk about the packaging, talk about what the
Yeah.
packaging looks like now. No
Yeah.
doubt you've probably got plans for the future as well as to what it looks like.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And yes, and then people also ask, why don't you do seaweed packaging? And I'm like, oh,
mm,
yes,
mm.
okay, I'll do that on my spare time. But
Yeah.
seaweed packaging is something that
Yeah.
is being developed by other groups.
Mm,
My focus has very strategically been on what can we scale and get towards profitability with
yeah.
in the shortest space of time. And
Yeah.
packaging is not one of those areas, because it's like oil and fuels. It's a cheap commodity supply chain, and
Mm,
you have to work in higher value space to make industries work at the smaller scale. But we indeed have materials, and we 3D print materials. So packaging, when we get to scale, is a solution that we can use the seaweed for. But on our choice of packaging in our current range, we work constantly. We're members of APCO, and we're constantly trying to work out how can this be a sustainable package and functional and pretty, at the same time. We're very proud to say that so many of our packages are either fully home compostable or recyclable. And that includes some of the sachets. We have refill sachets for compostable PET jars for the supplements. The skincare, we've just moved after a lot of research into what we felt was the best solution we could have to just get plastic out of the skincare supply chain, because even if you can recycle those skincare bottles, if they end up in the ocean, there's still plastic in the ocean.
yeah.
And the aluminium, it doesn't end up in the ocean as much, is more valuable in its recycling. It would still have impact, any rubbish in the oceans does, but less so than the plastic. And so we're really proud to be launching now our recent limited by edition silver aluminium packaging. And in 2 weeks, we'll have our water-based, non-toxic ink, fully printed skincare bottles. And we also work with sort of sustainable inks on our cartons and FSC certified cardboards and things as well. So yes, we are really glad for all of the customers that expressed to us why something didn't work or didn't look right or didn't contain or didn't last. And it's always a balance for us in trying to achieve that. And packaging is something we're constantly reviewing. So yeah, thanks for the feedback, and
Mm.
yeah, we will take it on board.
Yeah, great. And just the next question here from Pete. Once invested, how could I monitor the value of my investment and how and when I could sell? Really great question, of which there's a bit of an ambiguous answer because, of course, you don't always know. I think you covered it off really quite well in terms of what you've done before in the past, Pia. Of course, all the funds that you're raising right now are going to be used to be able to grow the business. As far as monitoring the value of the shares is concerned, that probably in most cases will happen when you might do another investment round or you go through a valuation process, and then that can be shared with your shareholders. As far as it's concerned, though, I'll hand over to you sort of cover off what you believe will be the methodology in which you'll use to try and be as
Mhm.
transparent as possible, which no doubt you will, because that is always the way you've operated this business.
Yeah, and that's what's exciting with the crowd is we keep giving updates and being as transparent and informative as possible.
Mm.
And it includes that you actually it's ASIC regulations that as a crowd equity investor, you cannot sell your shares within the first 12 months. So yeah, you have to wait 12 months at least. And then internally, as I mentioned, you can offer your shares and we advertise it to existing shareholders internally. And because we have a number of them, we have done a number of those transactions in the company to date. But it would be difficult to offload very large ones with that process. And that's then hence the term, the liquidity of it at this stage until we get to a next large raise or IPO or dividends situation.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but you can sell them technically, but you cannot within the first 12 months. And we are on a shareholder registry portal. It was called Orchestra until a couple of weeks ago. It's now called Sharesies, but it is a portal where all of our shareholders have their shareholding and the amount they invested at,
Yeah.
and that investment is published on the Sharesies portal. And we also do updates through that portal as well as emails. So yeah, you can reach out to us and see all of your
Mm.
shareholding live at any time through that portal.
Fantastic. And just not a question at all, but Louise has said, Pia, you are such a great, authentic brand ambassador. Thank you so much for the lovely comment. That's well, really, I think, yeah, just a fantastic comment to receive.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for putting that big smile on Pia's face. Um, Philip, great question here. I would like to see where the marketing spend is at now. Is it sustainable? Are you able to maintain revenue if the marketing budget eases off? And how is repeat customer spending going?
Mm.
This was my favorite conversation we had the other day, Pia. So over to you to answer.
Yeah, a part of our growth journey. And, when I stood there with bags of green seaweed a few years ago going, who's going to buy it?
Mm,
And then, testing the different markets and then just seeing how powerful the e-commerce wheel is now. It's growing all the time. People are becoming more comfortable with e-commerce.
mm,
And it is 90% of our revenue now. So we would have broken through the 1.2 million, $3 million of sales now.
mm.
It's $1 million of e-commerce sales.
Yeah.
And that's accelerated a lot because we've started to get a handle on the marketing channels, the demographics. We use, of course, very expensive marketing platforms. That's Meta, Google. We actually have done a bit of TikToking now. and also our email marketing and the website SEO and how all of that works. And we've really took a leap in sophistication of that system in the last 12 months, which has really helped us scale. And yes, it's very expensive in terms of dollar spend on the ads, but we actually dropped in the last 9 months the cost of customer acquisition. So we used to have to pay about $80 of ads to get one new customer into our system. And we dropped that down to it's been between $15 to $25
Really
in
low.
the last 6 months. And so suddenly we can then improve our margins. We're getting more efficient with the production of our goods as we're able to buy larger volumes of packaging, because before you paid $2 a bag when you could do 100 units. Now you can do 2,000 or 10,000 units and it costs 40 cents a bag. So things like that are actually coming into play. And in the last year, we would have raised our margins from 50% to 57% in the Phyco Health entity through that, as well as dropping the marketing. And so, yeah, we now have also software. I shared it with Robin as well. So impressive, that starts to integrate all of your data sources and ad spend. And when it becomes efficient for you to spend more on ads to generate more margin and revenue. And these systems are so exciting. And I would say never underestimate the power of e-commerce. Making sure that we don't put all our eggs in the Facebook basket or the Google basket or the TikTok basket. And we are also looking to scale we're in Harris Farm Markets for our food range. So we are looking as well to expand into retail slowly but surely. But we're so much more successful in growth at this growth stage by focusing on e-commerce. And really, we've just pushed that in Australia in the last 12 months. We actually dropped off any advertising in the UK, where we do have some established customers and we're shipping out to them. But we just thought, let's just focus and grow the marketing in Australia and in a specific segment. And that's been amazing. And now we have the opportunity to scale geography. We have the opportunity to scale demographic channels, and we have the opportunity to scale product categories and actual products within the categories, and so many stories to tell on all the science for customers and nutrition that yeah, I think our website and e-commerce is becoming a bit of an encyclopedia on seaweed nutrition science. But we get so many customers who ask us the questions directly, and that's what's powerful too, because if a customer just picks something up on the shelf, they've usually just got the package, maybe a QR code and a website to look at, but they actually have direct communication with us through the e-commerce, updated research and newsletters. So I feel it's a really powerful wheelhouse that we just need to keep growing. It's a really great scaling opportunity for the market.
Yeah, 100%. And what is your repeat customer rate at the moment?
Yeah, it's even though we've grown a lot of customers in the last 6 months and in the last month even, it was 60% returning customer rate still at the moment.
Yeah.
So we have an incredibly good lifetime value, and some of the people that work with our data consolidation on the e-commerce end just say, wow, you have such a high returning customer rate. I am so glad to have had some of our customers, even in the UK, since on the journey for 5 or 6 years, and yeah, it's really amazing to have that direct connection to the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the key from my perspective in your business, is the multiple layers of control that you have, from understanding exactly what the customer needs, understanding, okay, they don't like this style of packaging, or they don't like this element of the product, or this is the research. You have so much control really all the way down your supply chain, in terms of the products that you're producing and the research that actually shows what's working and what's not working. And you're the one selling that. You're the experts in this field. And when looking at your marketing data and your insights, your cost of acquiring a new customer is incredibly cheap in a market which is really quite slow right now, and a lot of different brands are spending a lot more money on acquiring new customers. That's certainly not the case for you. In fact, even when we first started talking, I think your CAC has gone down, and your lifetime value keeps on increasing. So really interesting to see. There's more information on this in the offer document as well. If you want to just look at all the data on how the whole business is doing and performing. Question here around how can you explain how the shares are valued at $5 a share with the raise as opposed to $6 on the previous raise? I believe you mentioned it was $6 in the last raise, and there would be a bit of an uptick there.
Yeah.
So we've covered off that one. Julia's asked a question. Hi, I'm used to purchasing shares on the share market. How does purchasing shares in this setup work? Is there somebody I can chat to regarding this? Absolutely, Pia. This is obviously your third raise. But then Carla, who's also on this call from On Market, will no doubt be very happy to have a chat with you. And On Market does IPO allocation raises and wholesale investment raises as well as equity crowdfunding. So she'll be more than happy, I'm sure, to have a chat with you around the differences in this asset class and what you're actually receiving in terms of shares as well. Anything else you wanted to add, Pia?
No, yeah, I get many people who have invested on the stock exchange asking how does crowd equity work, and I explain, yeah, this so on market
Yeah.
is the ASIC um, regulatory arm. On market's not the regulatory arm, but the outreach of the regulations to both you as the investors and us as the company offering shares to make sure that all of the boxes are ticked and
Yeah.
everything is very legitimate. And on market operates in this space and time now and today. And then after we have finished the raise, then we manage the shares in our shareholding registry. And so
Yeah.
then we become the contact for any shareholders at that point in time.
Yeah.
But it was really easy to work previously with that transition. We then have an ASIC agent in our company who, if there's any changes in shareholdings or anything, we make sure that's always updated with ASIC straight away. And so in the difference being to the ASX is it's sort of an automated mammoth of a system that you operate through. But with us, you'd be contacting us after the raise or on market during the raise for any of those types of questions. And sometimes we get shareholders coming in who never invested on the ASX at all and never invested. And then we also have to explain how it works from that point of view. So it's a really nice melting pot of both very experienced investors investing in, would you agree, Robin, a really exciting space of growth for investment that's way bigger in the country that you come from, I know, than what it has been here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say, I know we're going over time. We've still got 45 open questions. I'm going to try my best to go through all of these as quickly as possible, and we'll try and get through all of these. As I've mentioned before, we'll send around the recording to anybody who has to drop off right now. Know that we will answer your question if it is up there. So thanks so much for all of these. I'll whiz through them now. Tim, I'm a bit of a rookie when it comes to investing. If I decide to invest, what's the best approach to doing this? If you haven't already expressed interest to invest on market, that's the first step. Because then once you express interest to invest, then we'll send you a follow-up with details on the investment opportunity itself so you can fully understand it. And then we will really through the next few days in the lead up to the offer when it is live on Thursday next week. We'll provide you with an offer document where we really want you to read the offer document, the CSF risk warning, and really understand what you're getting into because you're purchasing ordinary shares with voting rights. As I've mentioned, it's a proprietary limited company, so they're not immediately liquid shares. So look, as far as the details are concerned, I would just make sure that you have expressed interest to invest, and then we will outline the steps upon which you can do that and what it means to be an investor. The sections in the offer document outline exactly what the terms are. So I'd really just encourage everybody to read that if you're a little bit unsure about what it looks like. Then as far as could you comment on the minimum investment horizon? I think we've covered that off, which you mentioned earlier, Pia, around potentially the 500 mark, but this is subject to change. Just, but looking at all the interest that has come in, we'll just assess that as and when we get closer towards the offer launch. Anne has asked, given the need to be near the sea, I'm wondering about how the company is considering the risk of flooding and seawater. With climate change, basically, it would be really sad to see the whole thing wash out to the ocean, losing the business and creating more pollution at the same time. What's your thoughts on this, Pia?
Yeah, absolutely. And coastal zones are, the most active space, being challenged from land and sea. And I mean,
Mm,
here on the south coast as well, we were exposed. It was part of our challenge in growth, and was the bushfires. We lost people and suppliers, infrastructure in our local area. And then since then, we've been inundated by floods and gone all tropical for a while. So we are also operating on a floodplain. So we're very aware. Currently, the pilot farms that we had set up were above a 1 in 500 year flood area, but in a floodable zone. And we're actually designing. You saw we're doing horizontal pools. We've got the vertical indoor farming systems as well. And some of the horizontal pool systems, we're actually looking at doing a dry dock. So the Yamba site, for example, liners and dry docked floatable systems, so that we can actually exist on sort of in industrialized flood zone lands and maintain the production during the high
yeah,
level floods as
yeah.
well. We're also looking at how the opportunity can exist to allow the system to be flooded. We can actually allow seaweed to be pumped or sink and
Mm,
let
mm,
floods pass. So we have a number of technologies up our sleeves that we have actually been put into place, and during some very heavy rain periods in the last years. And yes, that's if we have a typhoon, that will be harder to deal with. But we feel pretty well experienced and versed in how to deal with the 1 in 500 year type flood scenarios. And fire zones aren't very close to us, but they do affect the regions that we exist in.
mm, mm, mm. And Jesse has asked, should investors be concerned about the company being very peer centric? Keep us in insurance is always a matter
Yes.
that's pretty important. And yeah, how have you sort of prepared for this?
Yeah, so you can't see them here, but their faces are in the offer document, and I have a really happy team of about 15 people who are working with me now. And I have to say that, 2 or 3 years ago, it was me doing all the processing and the drying and everything. But since a couple of years ago now, I actually get asked a question maybe during a processing day.
Yeah.
The farming as well. I have a bit of a half hands-off approach to that at the moment. I'm pretty intensive on all of the marketing and information, because that has to be correct in the market place. And of course, events like this, I'm very active. So yes, I have had to be very centric in the growth at this stage of the company, but more and more, and as we get partners further north as well, we're going to be looking at partnering, licensing, having standard operating procedures in place. It's a lot of what we do now,
Mm,
getting
mm.
more and more standard operating procedures drawn up, so that one day it can operate without me. But,
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
personal point of view, I'm not looking for a fast exit if that becomes a question, because, yeah, what else would I do? I've invested so much in this space.
Yeah.
So I'm keen to stay involved
Mm,
in this
mm.
space moving forward. But more and more people are coming in to manage the different parts of the business, and take responsibility. And we will actually increase some headcount with this raise, and keep making that delegation possible.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And question here, please send me your plan of healing psoriasis. I'm a naturopath treating clients with the condition and would love to use your product.
Yeah, so we will aim to send out the 2 studies, as you mentioned, Robin, and one of them specifically focuses on psoriasis and the 5 cytokine markers that were linked to to that. And it is, today we know many ailments like that are triggered from the gut, and it's
Mm, mm.
80% role in our immune system, and
Yeah,
rather than topical. And so yeah, we'll send out those papers, and that product is our current sea fiber range of 3 products, and we
yeah.
developed the one for your information with calcium, because that's often deficient in psoriasis patients as well. But we'll send you those papers, and the products are the current sea fiber supplement range.
Yeah, fantastic. And what does the cap table look like at the moment, and what do you expect it to look like post raise? Obviously, you've got over 800 shareholders right now.
Mm.
We could see anywhere up to another 500 come in to the company. Of course, I think there's always cap table management concerns around these types of investments.
Mm.
Maybe you can talk to, once you've got 800, the difference between having 800 or 1300 or more just doesn't it really change that much from a management perspective.
No, that's right. In fact, I would say that the crowd investment scenario has seen that management, in a way, be easier. There's a big administrative, and we've got shares on a portal, and there's many more shareholders. But many more shareholders understand as well that this is a conglomerate, if you like,
Yeah.
and the question and answers are
Mhm.
pretty automated and standard through the shareholder portal that we operate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not, yeah, like it is exactly what you said, Robin. If you went from 5 shareholders to 500, then
Yeah.
that's a big thing to consider. But going from 880 plus to over 1,000 is not a big thing to consider.
Yeah, yeah, great. And Pam has not asked a question, not a question, but a huge thank you for all you're doing. You're an inspiration. I'm a JB local and see firsthand your impact. It's a great, lovely comment from Pam. Thank you very much. James here has asked, in talking about your dollars per share, can you articulate how many shares or just disclose the company valuation? Dollar price per share, not very meaningful in trying to understand the company value. I think just it's important to address that at this point in time, a number of conversations are happening with potential investors in this capital raise, and that valuation is still just being finalized at this point. And so that will be available in the offer document. There's a plan to get a draft offer document around to a few individuals, of which that's sort of happening at this point in time. So it's going to be finalized early next week, which then that's when we can sort of share those details on that. Is that fair enough? Is there anything else you want to add, Pia?
Yeah, no, that's right. And just to reiterate, last time, yeah, 6, the shares were $6, and the company was, I think, the $6 um, um, buyers. The company was valued at, I think it was like 24 million on the last raise. So that was then, and yeah, will be slightly more, and you'll see that in the offer document next week.
Right. Fantastic. And are you planning to develop an EPA, DH/DHA omega-3 supplement?
Yeah, so we do have very nice EPA levels in our seaweed, and a bit of DHA, and also,
Yeah.
excitingly, SDA for those people who love their lipids.
Yeah.
But also we work very closely, as I mentioned, my colleagues up north who do microalgae, and we see ourselves as very aligned in being able to be complementary in the type of products that we can grow and trade with each other and focus on. So our seaweed has, as I said, SDA and EPA, but it's not super oily. It's about 5, we can get up to 10% of the seaweed. So you wouldn't squeeze the oil out, so to speak. Whereas
Yeah.
the microalgae that are being cultivated, they can be 30, sometimes some of them 50% oil. They're really oily. And so we can actually talk about omega-3 in our food products. And as I said, the abalone really shifted their omega-3 profile by eating our seaweed, and the same would happen if you eat our pasta or something. But we wouldn't be worth squeezing it out, so to speak.
Fantastic. And just a comment here again, Pia, I've been an admirer of yours for years. A great informative session that reflects your avid passion, intelligence, knowledge, and intention. Love your integrity and energy. Thank you. What a lovely comment. Wendy here has asked, hi Pierre, have you been able to transition your facilities to GMP standards?
Ah, well, that's actually part of this purpose of this raise as well,
Great.
because as we enter those medical grade ingredients, so we operate as a food grade facility now, and we work with colleagues at the universities when we're taking things into the research
Mm,
space and skin on a bench type things, not
yeah, yeah.
in humans yet. So yes, it's part of this raise, and we'll outline that. But we also did just apply to the New South Wales Biosciences Fund for 1.5 million, and we'll know in November whether we're successful in that. And that's actually, if we are, and fingers crossed, we would that will contribute a lot to
Mm,
growing
mm, mm.
GMP and GMP chains with the partners that take them into the clinics.
Yeah,
Which
great.
for anyone who doesn't know means good manufacturing practice, and it's for very clean molecules that maybe even FDA and TGA approved facilities. If you end up injecting someone's knees with it, it has to be
Yeah.
pretty clean, cleaner than pasta.
Yeah. A question here quickly about what the cutoff is to invest, as I may want to show others. Great question. Currently, with the plan to open on Thursday next week, the plan is to open the offer on the 24th of 26th rather of June, and then to close the offer on the 10th of July. Of course, the offer document will display these dates though. So know that they are not final until the offer document is final, which will be released and available next week. If you aren't on the expression of interest list, please do get yourself on that so then you actually get notified of when the offer goes live because it's only going live firstly to expressions of interest. Are you actively engaged in trying to improve the sustainability of your packaging? I know you touched on this earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a full-time job. Oh, look here, I'm sitting here with
Yeah,
packaging like now all around me. Yeah, these are
yeah,
actually pretty interesting. These are fully
yeah.
recyclable and manufactured in Australia. If we have any plastic, we make sure that it's fully rPET.
Mm,
And
mm,
we've just gone to the aluminium packaging, as I talked about before. And even our zipper sachets that are refills for the supplements are
mm,
fully home
mm,
compostable, even the zipper. So we can't solve all the packaging problems ourselves, but we are constantly on the lookout for the latest and the best solution. And are members of APCO, which is Australia's sort of renewable, sustainable packaging uh,
mm, mm.
organization. So yes, oh yeah, it's in my brain all the time.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And what are the major risks faced in future production that you can highlight just really quickly now?
Yeah, so there's managing those risks and taking my strategy's been taking very focused small stepping stones because I actually see as I presented that why shouldn't seaweed be 10% of the size of, say, the wheat industry in Australia? We could save 1 million hectares of land from food production if we could get to that scale, as well as lots of water, energy, and protect coastlines. But
Mm,
to make a leap from a test tube to where we are today has meant that we've had to like, oh wow, this happens when you try and dry it. Oh
mm,
wow,
mm.
this happens when you have that
Yeah,
much product for that long, or this packaging doesn't work with this kind of product.
yeah,
All of those things you can try and anticipate, but you never actually do until you've taken the next big step. And
yeah.
I'm very glad and proud that we actually said, yeah, we can be 10% the size of the wheat industry, but we
Mm,
didn't go
mm.
out and promise that because then you would have made really big mistakes.
Yeah,
And so that's how I see the stepping stones of growth here is part of the reason we do it is to manage risks.
yeah.
Um, Even just last week, we did a new formulation and a dried powder blend that was very easy on a bench and a sieve, and it looked great. But as soon as we had larger amounts of it, and it was a humid day, and there was pressure
Mm,
due to the
mm.
weight, suddenly the product performed differently, and we would not have known that unless we made it in a 500
Yeah,
kilo batch. And so there's little risks all the
yeah,
way. There's biological risks at the farm, and that's our daily awareness is
Mm.
about yeah, managing those risks and manageable ways. You do make fast, small mistakes, fix them and solve them and make a big leap forward. So that's how we operate with those risks. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And what education are you providing to health practitioners on using these products to their full effect? Probably another thing that you add to the very long list of things that you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
right. We do have a number of clinicians now who either sell or recommend our products or are
Yeah.
interested in them and learning about them more. And so,
Mm,
yes,
mm.
our information packages have previously been tailored to the consumer, but we have many clinicians who want to understand the science and the research that we are doing. And so we are actively now building
Mm,
some
mm.
um, product information brochures and things for both retailers and clinicians. And even we may release clinician specific categories of products in the future as well. So if you are a clinician, we're very
Yeah.
glad to be connected with you and work with you on tailoring the information that you need to support
Yeah.
your information to clients.
Yeah, great. And what percentage of the company do you currently obtain? Of course, this will be available in
Sure.
the offer document, but I think this is probably asked around what's your incentive really now to drive the company?
Yeah, so I'm at about 25% of 25% of the
Mm.
company at the moment. So yeah, and I have both invested and put blood, sweat, and tears into the company
Yeah.
over a long time. Yeah, and so as larger investment comes in, then yeah, my dilution is there the same as anyone's. I have ordinary shares, just like everybody else who will be coming into
Yeah.
the company. But there are also some staff, so ESOP, employment share option plans that are in place as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, currently I'm in at 24 to 25%.
Mm,
And
mm.
yeah, that's and my staff are shareholders as well. And
Yeah.
we're all very excited each day we come in and all motivated by one, our
Yeah.
ownership, but also what we're doing.
Yeah, great. And I think we covered this other question off pretty in enough detail before, but I'll just ask in case you wanted to add anything. Anne has said, Pierre, you're so energetic and enthused, but as we all know, life happens. Is there a succession plan in place?
Yeah, well, my daughters said we don't want to be seaweed farmers, so they do. They are
Yeah.
they are involved in the company and
Mm,
a little
mm.
bit and have one helps me with customer service, but that's just a literal succession plan. No, in terms of the succession plan, I touched on it before. It's
Yeah.
about standard operating procedures to empower
Yeah.
systems
Yeah.
to be managed by people that don't have to think
Mm,
or be aware of the complexities of the platform and the connections between them.
yeah.
And at the moment, for example, in the marketing, I still need to maintain a hold until all of our macros and information and resources. We have customer service agents now that help us, and I've got an encyclopedia that they can slowly just tap into to deliver the customer
Mm,
information, and slowly we'll be able to have enough of a deposit there that I don't need to be operating, and I can bring in a manager of retail and communication customer service,
yeah.
as well as same on the farming. And so working with the people up north who have been operating the
Mm, mm.
microalgae and aquaculture farms are people who I will be looking to take over that. So it's not going to be a one person succession plan because it's a platform. It's going to
Yeah.
be a multiple manager succession plan, and that's part of the journey.
Yeah, fantastic. We've got a number of questions here actually around your customer sort of demographic when what you basically you mentioned earlier that you've focused a lot more on marketing to Australia and capturing this market. You've had a few questions around selling overseas, internationally. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Europe. You mentioned the UK and having some core customers over there. But maybe talk a little bit about the breakdown of your different markets, what you know about the different markets upon which you've marketed and advertised those products to. Really, what it's looking like as far as your focus is concerned, I think it's really smart to focus most of your marketing spend here in Australia to try and see what the ceiling is in this market before then moving to another market. A lot of people use Australia as a sort of guinea pig test market to understand what the capacity is within this market first. So yeah,
Yeah,
we'll let off.
we learnt as well, we you sort of get pushed a bit and you
Mm,
be a
mm,
bit that export, we've got to export and we did that and I was very glad to do that and we've been to the UK. We won the most innovative protein source at the International Food Expo there, and we have established an e-commerce hub warehouse, and we do ship from that warehouse online in a small way. We then also then did enter Holland and Barrett as a retailer, and it was exciting to show that the interest and that we
yeah,
could deliver there. But it's very hard to compete on many, because each new channel that you have, and also into retail like that, your margins are depressed. And so for a company that doesn't have a large volume and tight margins when it's at a small scale, means that it's just very costly and you're
yeah,
spreading your money very thin on returns by advertising so geographically broadly, and also channel in retail and e-commerce and trying to push all of the channels at once.
yeah,
And so we consciously saw that and went, okay, we've proven we can go to the UK, we can get through the regulatory, I know how the labeling system works, and now let me tell
yeah,
you that the UK and Australia do not speak the same language because the labels are very
yeah,
different,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah,
are all of those things we've proven, but we consciously said, let's be efficient with our ad spend and grow to profitability by
mm,
narrowing
mm,
that marketing spend. And we do have interest now in the supplements offshore as well,
mm,
into Asia and places, and so we
yeah,
won't be jumping to it straight away, but our growth now in the farming is about getting that footprint ready, because when the request does come through the door, we need to be ready to start delivering to it.
yeah, great. And just going through the questions here, there's a number of questions around expressing interest to invest and being on the list of people who are early enough to have expressed interest to invest to then gain access to the offer document when it launches next week. Sorry if that was unclear. The expression of interest campaign is hosted on OnMarket. You can head to OnMarket, and the FICO Live campaign is right there. For everybody who is here, we will send you an email with details to sign up and express interest to invest, as well as then if you need to contact OnMarket or Peer or anybody in order to ask a few questions specifically around the investment mechanism and how it works, we'll leave some of those details there. So we will send you details of this afterwards, as well as the recording of the investor webinar that you're on as well. So don't worry too much. You're here. We've got many days for you to sign up and express interest to invest and gain early access to the investment offer when it opens next Thursday. A comment here, actually, I recently saw a marketing technique using influencers to promote and reward. Then, if they get a certain, million number of views, is that a technique that you've looked at?
Yes, so we have we have our best influencers are our
Yeah,
customers and the reviews that customers put on
yeah,
our website. And then we have worked with some user-generated content, so to speak, with people who are just glad to have some product and try and
mm,
promote. And also one influence I've used in the UK quite a bit is Bettina's Kitchen. So she does amazing cooking demonstrations with our products that are so much prettier and tastier than my cooking, and so we use her videos and assets, and some of our recipes on our website are from Bettina having used our products.
mm,
Yeah, there's many of these e-commerce, spread the word, recommend someone. We have a rewards program on our website, so if you the more you order, then you can get discounts to make sure that people who keep coming back can actually get
mm,
lower costs, and if referring friends as well, get rewards for that. So we do have some systems in the back end for that, and recurring. So we have many people on subscription. 10% of our
mm, mm.
sales revenue is from recurring orders,
Yeah,
and so that also offers discounts. So when we work constantly with trying to make sure that our regular customers can get better deals than incomers, but we also want to let people try and come in with a reward. So it's always a balance of how we can promote cost effectively. But anyone who wants to tell anyone about our products is very welcome to. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, you've literally got a comment here from Kim who's saying, I'm so excited by this opportunity and the work that you're doing across all the products. It ticks all the boxes for me as far as an investment opportunity due to the products, what the products are, the ethos behind it, and the sustainability. I can attest to the skincare line as a user, looking forward to trying the products for inflammation. You're just getting so many of these comments, Pierre. You've clearly got some fans, which you've built along the way of years and years of very, very hard work. And Linda here saying, I'm keen to invest. That's really, really great. As far as we've already answered, do you sell any products in Europe? And we've gone through that. Sorry if this was discussed at the beginning of the session as I came 15 minutes late, but given the additional opportunities, has there been a restructuring to product priorities? I think actually the business itself and how you're structuring it moving forward, no doubt. I mean, look, you've kind of like you've highlighted, you've got a top company, you've got Phyco Life, you've got Phyco Health. From every time I speak to you, I hear that there's an opportunity for another brand, especially when you look at the likes of animal supplements, because you wouldn't sell that under Phyco Health. But the opportunities themselves have to be limited. But how are you structuring the business, I think, to really take advantage of the right opportunities? Because you've done a lot of research. A lot of the funds here are going to be used for the two new farms. But what does the business structure look like moving forward a year after this raise, and then 2 years, 3 years? Maybe we can go through that.
yeah, so you'll see in the offer document too, I've actually mapped out where we came from historically, and what we did early in the 90s
Mm,
and
mm.
things was that we had to identify. I beg to differ there, Robin. I can actually
Yeah.
put seaweed in anything, whether it be
Yeah.
toothpaste or wall paint
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
breakfast cereal, we're there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Even on the farm and everywhere. So
Mm,
yes,
mm,
you
mm.
can spread yourself very thin by doing that. So we
Yeah.
looked strategically at where the industry opportunities are and the different scales you have to be at and the different
Mm, mm.
commodity pricing that exists in those different chains. And we identified that food, nutrition, and health and skincare evolved as we learned about the molecules, that those were the sweet spot. And that's what we did then last year as well, is we focused, well, skincare, we can actually achieve scaling of sales because we've got enough
Mm.
production to do that. But now when we're going to the supplements, which is a great opportunity both for health and for the business growth viability, but we
Yeah.
actually need more seaweed for that. So we're always consciously looking at what is the next piece of
Mm.
the industry puzzle that we can tackle. And down the track one day, I think I will show you in the offer document too. I think I did. So there's companies asking for
Yeah.
us to test things on vaccines or stem cell research. So we
Mm.
don't actively manufacture and do all of those things, but for us to get our ingredient out to partners that do, and then deciding how the company aligns the partnerships. Are we just selling ingredients to them? Are we
Yeah.
partnering in the technology with them? Or are we becoming that new spin-off entity? And so the board is going to be challenged and have the opportunity. It's really an opportunity, but it's the challenge to be focused
Mm.
in the number of opportunities we have. And so
Yeah.
just always
Yeah.
being aware is really important.
100%. And Jeffy has asked, have there been any good surveys done regarding fertilizers, runoff from the cane fields, etc., plus PFAS, as in what the problem is at Wreck Bay?
Yes, Wreck Bay's really struggled with that PFAS problem, but
Mm.
yeah, so it's all our drinking water supplies
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the planet basically now. We've actually done on our website, if you look at the Phyco Health website and search
Mm.
PFAS, we have done tests on 35 PFAS types in our seaweeds and not found any records of PFAS in them.
Yeah.
And we are constantly aware. We've done a lot of metal testing, and we don't grow our seaweeds in heavy industry areas. We grow it in areas like the south coast, where the catchments, or the north coast, where the catchments are either green and national parks and very clean, or if they've got agriculture that the nutrients are there, and we don't want too many herbicides and things in our seaweeds either. So yeah,
Mm,
all of awareness all the time of the standard and quality of our seaweed based on where it's growing is
mm,
really important for food. One day we could even grow seaweeds in catchments that have, excuse the motorbikes here, the catchments that um, have metal contamination that becomes a cleaning. You don't want to put those seaweed into food chain
mm.
though. So seaweeds have mopping up opportunities in polluted areas as well. But we're not involved in that area. We focus mostly on very clean catchments and very clean nutrient sources for the seaweed cultivation.
Yeah, fantastic. And Susan said, not a question, but an observation. I'm not a repeating client yet, as I've not needed to use a lot of your lovely products. So I think your repeating customer count might actually be a little bit higher. Now using your cleanser as a body wash, as my skin doesn't like anything else. I
Mm.
think, these insights are just so incredibly valuable and lovely to receive, no doubt. Would being gluten intolerant be affected by the wheat factory runoff?
No, good question. Yeah, no, we don't actually put wheat into our
Mm,
seaweed,
mm, mm.
even though oh, we do make a pasta that
Yeah, yeah,
has wheat in it. But we growing the seaweed adjacent
yeah.
to wheat or fish waste streams, or we can even grow seaweed off mushroom waste. So any organic material can be digested down to the components of nitrates, phosphates, iron, magnesium, and then it
Mhm.
is no longer an organic molecule like gluten. It is smaller than that.
Yeah,
And so, no, we are really regenerating organic nutrients that have dissolved to the beginning again. So we are the
yeah,
start of life before it becomes anything. So really, gluten has to rely on our product would have to go into a yeah we could use our product in agricultural
yeah,
fields and create the opportunities to farm wheat and the gluten and things like that, and then bring the nutrients back into gluten,
yeah,
but
yeah.
we don't have any traces of gluten in the prod in the seaweed itself, no.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And Gary said, so great to get your update. I grew up eating seaweed in Wales as a doctor in Australia. I'm very interested in the great work you've already done and this potential and the potential applications I'm in. Great. Anne said she was one of the original guinea pigs in your huge clinical study a few years ago, but haven't had the money to invest now. But now I'm interested and have a small amount to invest. And what is this like? Again, I think, just for the follow-up question, we'll add some details in there. We'll add somebody for you to contact and reach out to, just to ask some of those questions. As well as that, though, we'll make sure that we make this as simple and easy to understand as possible. We always try to do that from our side, and we will break this down when you're in that EOI list. So as far as that's concerned, we will definitely make sure that we cover that off. There's quite a few comments and questions in here as far as things are concerned. Which geographical regions would you focus on for your growth strategies for existing ranges? What is the sales breakdown for the Asia Pacific region? Maybe we could speak about that just briefly.
So the sales breakdown for Asia Pacific.
Yeah,
Well, we do ship, I think on the Shopify record, we ship to 20 countries if you look.
great.
Some of them as far as Finland and Norway, where my roots, Spain, Portugal, the US. We ship directly to the US without a hurdle. We did have hurdles to the UK, but I'd say about just 5% of our sales maybe into the UK. So the other countries
Yeah.
are small because we're not really advertising there, but we do get people finding our website and we can do direct shipping to them.
Mm,
So we've
mm,
shown that
mm.
there's no real barriers to it. It's where the shipping costs can become a hurdle, and that's why we set up the UK warehouse, because shipping to those customers in the UK from here and getting them to pay $25 and go through picking up at customs and everything was very
Yeah.
difficult. So that's helped. There is now a barrier instead between Brexit, UK, and the Europe. So
Yeah.
we can do it, but there's some challenges there. And into the Asian markets, we're actually in discussions with some we're not well versed in the advertising and e-commerce structures there. And so
Mm,
we're working with
mm,
a number of partners who do market into ASEAN and the Greater China area.
yeah.
Hasn't been a priority, but we're well aware that it could be very important in our growth. But I also
Mhm.
don't want to turn that big button on until we have the big production happening
Yeah.
to support it. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And just really quickly, wound healing, is that a market that you've looked at as well?
Yes, absolutely. So we work directly. We have done now 3D printed full thickness skin tissue on a bench,
Mm,
and work with Fiona Wood in Western Australia, who did the burn spray. We are looking to help her in her dream of not only saving lives by recreating skin, but recreating structured functional skin, because the molecules we have
yeah.
help to organize collagen and things in that way.
Yeah,
So
fantastic.
yes, we do work with her, and we also work with university researchers at Sydney
Mm,
University and nurses who are looking at the recovery of radiation chemotherapy skin damage and the damage to the microbiome on skin, and how our seaweed gels work with that microbiome. So it's a really exciting space, the wound healing space, and we continue our research there.
fantastic. And just one final question. I've seen some great research on calcium from oyster shell being very effective, a very effective treatment for osteoporosis, but we can't buy it at food grade in Australia. Maybe you could look at that. So little on offer, either in terms of research and supplements or treatment for post menopausal women's health. This is definitely, as far as I can understand from some other people who are looking into the category, a bit of an overlooked category. So maybe you can talk a little bit more on that.
Yeah, it's a. I have actually a flywheel of demographics from
Mm, mm.
builders' hands to schoolyard nutrition
Yeah,
to sports people and menopausal women. And
yeah.
they were a sliver there, but that's
Mm,
actually just become a very strong market for the growth in our skincare. And
yeah.
especially because we've shown that we can hydration in skin is a challenge that
Mm,
suddenly
mm,
becomes
mm.
an issue during menopause for hormonal related reasons, and
Yeah,
many women do use hyaluronic acid and products in that way then. And so we've shown that our hyaluronic acid is more resistant to enzymes that break down hyaluronic acid even on in the skincare, and is a much more sustainable source. So yeah, that is exciting from the skincare point of view. But not only that, in menopause and in women's health in general, um, um, many polycystic ovary syndromes and things like that. Actually, fiber and gel fibers and mucosal lining in your gut is really important during that time. And the whole Western world doesn't get enough fiber, but
yeah,
it expresses itself a lot in that category. And so we are looking at some of not just the skincare from the outside, but skincare from the inside, and wellness from the inside through the fiber. And that's what will be coming with these supplements. And that's what we're needing to scale for, because the supplements take more seaweed than the skincare.
fantastic, fantastic. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody who is still here after answering almost 75 questions. There's still over 60 of you here. Thank you so, so much for your questions, your comments, your participation. Pia, it's been so lovely to work with you over this time, and really, like I said, the more I learn about the business, the more exciting the opportunity becomes for me. Really, really just have enjoyed learning so, so much about the industry and the incredible work that you're doing in it. So I'll hand over to you to make your sort of closing statement. But just wanted to thank everybody else who's had some really great questions and insightful points to make.
Yeah, so thank you again, everybody, for turning up. I'm happy to talk about seaweed for as long as I can.
Yeah.
I actually have a tour group visiting the factory right now, 23 people. So I'm going to depart and speak to them now. We have regularly school groups that visit here. And one day my dream is that, we'll have enough farms and I'll have the space to offer shareholders both visiting, but maybe come and be a seaweed farmer for a day one day in the future. Because
Yeah.
what's so fun about the crowd investment is that everybody's involved in this movement, and I keep trying to educate and inform and update shareholders with all the information. And one day, when my delegation works well, I can just be here telling everybody all the time about
Yeah.
how it all works. Thanks very much for listening. So enjoy your interest and enthusiasm in this new area of science. And I hope that some of you become shareholders and take the journey with us.
Thank you so much, Pia. And thank you so much, everybody. As mentioned, we'll absolutely send around some details if you haven't already expressed interest to invest, along with some other details to just make sure it's all nice and clear, and the recording for you to rewatch if you didn't get to the end with us. So thank you so much, everybody here today, and really loved your participation. We'll sign off for now. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.